Welcome to The Best Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Bradley H. Werrell, and we're here to explore options and potentials to help us grow as individuals and as a community with one another in these difficult times and challenging times. We're exploring all manner of potentials related to the human experience: physical, psychological, medical, spiritual. It's a wonderful opportunity that we now experience in this critical phase of our human evolution. And I welcome you to join us in our podcast, become more aware, and identify with people who are helpful and supportive of you in your efforts as a human being on this planet and elsewhere too. We're going to be meeting people who are doing things that are widely variant from what is so-called normal within our society, in the creative space, within the social space. Our common purpose, seeking to generate positive potentials to improve the lives of everyone in our sphere of influence, and to expand that sphere of influence so that we may positively influence others that are not yet engaged directly with us. That's the goal here. We will learn more about each other as we go. I wish you the very best. Thank you very much for tuning in. And I'm recording now. Go. So
I was telling we were talking off camera about integrity, and you had medicine me as a recovering trial lawyer, and I said I had the fortune or the misfortune of living with this crazy wisdom, enlightened Zen master, hillbilly Zen master, who nobody's ever heard of, and he was just his position was you had to, if you wanted to find the truth, you had to live the truth in everything. So that was part of his thing. So he was quite, and he was also probably certifiably insane, in retrospect, after giving 20 years of my life to this guy. But he also told the story. His father, again, we'll just, I don't know what it has to do with anything else, but his father, when Richard Rose, that was the man, my teacher's name's mother, was pregnant with him. So his mother's carrying Richard, and somebody pushed his mother off the sidewalk, and his father went and got a gun and just shot the guy, killed him. So he ended up so first of all, he had kind of a rather fanatical sense of protecting family and stuff, which was in his DNA and in his lineage. But his father went to the penitentiary. And when he was there, his father said that what you found is that the first time someone wolf whistled at you, you had to stick a knife in them, because the next thing they would be doing this and doing that and doing that. So what he saw was any kind of impediment, any kind of impingement on integrity was the first step to, it was the slippery slope to damnation. So we had quite an integral practice, and it worked out well for us. We were great lawyers, but we were the ones that sued the judges and sued the cops, and if you fought City Hall, we were those kind of guys. So anyway, I've tempered my fanaticism, but hopefully not my integrity.
that's good. I like that. I think that's a reasonable aspiration. It's very good, because it is integrity's got to remain. Otherwise, you're a spineless thing, and it's like that's not a good thing to be.
And I think with you too, from what I can see from you and just the conversations in you, is that it no longer becomes even an aspiration. It just becomes who you are.
That's right. Just you're going to be what you are, and take the lumps as they come, right? And that's just okay. Just roll with it and move on and take them and get up and dust off if necessary, right?
Yeah, and I think I notice as I get older, as I continue to get older, that I have less ego around being the knight in shining armor. It just becomes really the way you want, it's just the way you want to live your life and who you eventually grow into it. And I feel quite grateful to find myself at that position at this point in my life. And I don't have to look at my colleagues who I sold my practice, almost 40 years ago. 93. I got to do my math. 30 years ago. I'm not that old, but I sold, and because I had other things that I wanted to do, but I saw where others ended up, and my partners, who are still some of my best friends, are all of us ended up with our self-respect and our integrity, and more or less our equanimity intact. So I think we're what you
Good.
want to be is a testimonial to that. So all things considered, I consider
That's
myself.
good. You kind of came away clean, right?
I feel I came away clean. I needed to be deprogrammed a bit from some of the fanaticism, but off my high horse and find more subtle ways to manifest doing the right thing, and without as much bravado and grandiosity. But
Right.
yeah,
I was
I
going to
do.
ask you, you're in coaching now, it looks like.
Mentoring, yeah, I do. I do a lot. I mean, my interestingly enough, I had um, we were talking a little bit about some of your adventures and misadventures before you found your calling in medicine. Um, but I was I was surprised to find that I had a spiritual calling. I was a nice Jewish boy raised in a nice Jewish household. I mentioned to you, my brothers were doctors. I was the failure because I went to law school, and I just figured I would, make a ton of money and, have a wife and kids and a couple of few marriages, and everything would work out great. And then I had my father. I mentioned to you again off camera. My father passed away early and went through some trauma and ended up meeting this crazy guy who became my spiritual teacher while I was in law school. And I moved, and he opened something transcendent. He opened something transcendent in my being, which I didn't even have a context for that. I did not have an idea that there could be a higher dimension of experience, a more truthful place. And
Huh.
I became quite addicted to it. And I was on his farm. It was time for me, and I think still in my first or second year of law school, and I really found an equanimity, a peace that I had never experienced before. Didn't expect it with my wiring and my genetic, my lineage that I'd ever found. And I said, hey, I never want to leave your farm. I just want to come out here. And he said, thank God. He said, you're not meant to be a wood chopping monk. Uh, you were a lawyer when I met you. And so I had this kind of double life where I was a very devoted spiritual seeker. I mean, I can brag about, I was celibate for years, and I would spend 30 days a month in a cabin. I would spend a month at a time in a cabin just by myself, and it was really avid. But at the same time, I was very much in the world as
Huh.
first as an attorney, and then when I sold my practice to write a book, which I wrote but don't publicize much, people find it, and I'm almost embarrassed by it. And in fact, the guy that did our arborist found it and read it and has been pestering me nicely. But anyway, and then as an entrepreneur and working with, at the time I mentored college students, that I've never my spirituality, as much as I wanted to transcend the world, was always rooted in the earth and manifesting in that way.
Hmm.
And at some point, as you and I are both fortunate to have reached a point where I don't think I'm projecting upon you, where our lives make sense, so many, because we are who we want to be and we're doing what we want to do, that so many of these seeming, you and your tires, right? What the hell do the tires have to do with your life? But they all kind of, fall into place in a way.
That's right.
And so I found myself mentoring. I had a business, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years back, called Radical Spiritual Entrepreneurship. And I was working with spiritually minded folks, higher minded folks who wanted to manifest it in the world. And I found myself quite frustrated because for the most part, I had some great clients, some great people, but for the most part, a lot of them wanted to spiritually bypass. They wanted to find a way around having to do the work, and having to be in the world or not of the world or whatever. And I thought, I can't. And I came up with this phrase of shamelessly, at the time it was shamelessly spiritual and ruthlessly accountable. Now I say shamelessly idealistic and ruthlessly accountable. So it's kind of a long-winded way. And I started a company uh, called Heart Powered Ventures, and we work with higher-minded entrepreneurs, heart-powered entrepreneurs, to be able to bring their passion out into the world in a way that creates kind of a clear channel, the clearest channel possible between their highest passion, their deepest calling, and what they're bringing out into the world. And I have found, incidentally, since you are a physician, that there's a lot of correlations in medicine in terms of the body. When you start to connect, when you start to realize that everything in your life is going to manifest in your work,
Right.
and everything in your work is going to manifest in your life, you start to see this beautiful interplay. I call it turning the jewel, where
Okay.
you just, oh, I can look at the world through the eyes of my health. I can look at the world through the eyes of my business. I can look at through the eyes of my marriage.
Right.
And you start to see this beautiful, holistic kind of, can't say a holistic hologram. That's probably duplicate, but you start to see life in this very integral way.
Yeah, I like that. I started. One of the things I ran into is and I called it metaphorical analysis. Okay,
Yeah.
it's like this. It's like this is a crazy case. I wrote this down in my notebook. I keep notebooks, and I wrote in the notebook, and then I ran into this fellow, and I'm like, I wrote down the case in the notebook, and this guy was he was a worker, a factory worker, and he had a sadistic boss. And the sadistic boss would, and he needed his job. He's working in the factory, so he's kind of got to work at the machine. And if he leaves the machine, he's done. He got to go. He can't quit. He can't walk away. So, but what he had an irritable bowel syndrome. Okay. So sometimes he gets diarrhea and he's sick. He's got to go. So he gets to go because he's sick. And then sometimes he's constipated, right? And so I'm studying this and I'm writing this down in the journal. And I'm like this. It's like, okay, so the metaphorical analysis goes like this: is look, sometimes he doesn't give a shit, right? And sometimes shit, gotta go. It's like this, and I'm like, the body is the metaphor for what's going on in the psychic world, right?
Ah, that's
And
great. So if I can, and
yeah,
I'm sorry, if I'll take over. I get excited when I meet great people like you. And so about, about 12 years ago, I can't remember now. It seems so long ago, but I started to have some eye issues, and my
mm,
eyes were getting worse and worse and worse. And they gave me the diagnosis of low pressure glaucoma, which is a garbage pail diagnosis. So they just can't figure out what the hell to do with it. There's nothing to do for it. And fortunately, because of the life I live and the people I know, I was seeing shamans. Like I said, I was at the witch doctors. I went to the Mayo Clinic. I went to the Wills Eye Center. I was everywhere, right? And nobody could do anything. And I was literally going blind. And my sister, my beloved sister, who's since deceased, was a vision specialist, and she had seen this before. And she said, you learn, seriously, go learn Braille. This is what's coming.
oh my,
And then I was working with, I was on the board of, I was working with a different spiritual group. It took me a while to rid myself of spiritual teachers, but I've sworn off. But she was an MD, and she was an integrative physician. And she said, you know what, you've done everything, Dave. And I know you might not be into this, but I have an intuitive that I work with, and he's great, and give him a shot. And I said, I'm not against it, but what the hell, I've tried everything else. And I worked with him, and the first thing he said, first we worked well. I said, you're meant to do big things. He said, really big things, and you're not doing it. And he said, you've lost your vision because you've lost your vision.
right?
And it was, it's exactly what you were saying, not giving a shit.
It's just metaphorical. It's like the body gives a metaphor.
And it was the exact, and as I got that vision, and then it's so beautiful, it's so great you brought it up, because I was thinking, well, I'm talking to a doctor tonight. I should come up with some medical thing in my life. And I came up with a metaphor. And I have just, and my wife is a practitioner, and also quite intuitive, and just always just articulating what is the body telling you, what's the beautiful language, the metaphor that the body is using at any one time to tell you what it is you need to tell.
That's it.
So how do you see that in your practice?
And it's
How
an
does
interesting
it?
function. It's like I studied with a Jungian psychological group out of England for about a year. And the interesting function that I came up with is like, it's like there's signals coming from the body, okay? And it's like the signal's like a knocking at the door, right? And it's like this: the signal will get louder until you accept the message for what it actually is. And it's like, so I ran into this lady. She was anxious, okay? Now she was anxious because she was driving a car, and her husband was a passenger, and she got T-boned in the intersection by the 16-year-old who doesn't know how to drive and is still learning, and obviously so, and didn't. And it's like this. So she's anxious, and she gets these sensations in her diaphragm like this. It's just shaky, and she goes, and and she interprets it, and that's my anxiety, and it makes her positive feedback cycle more anxiety. And I'm like, you're not accepting the message. And so now we have to figure out what the message is, because the message, this is the door knocking, is this sensation. And I said, what's the message? And I said, I had to think about it. I had to channel the message for her, because she doesn't know what the message is, right? I said, the message is, you were in a car accident. Driving is dangerous, and it wasn't your fault. And it's like, when you accept that, it can stop knocking, right? And it's like, it's a fascinating thing, because it's like, it looks to me like people get, they generate a positive feedback cycle with the wrong interpretation for the signals coming from their body, is all it is. And it's like, so like you could accept, look, I'm going to go blind because I'm blind. I can't see. I better learn Braille, like my sister said, because she's a doctor and all la, 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 la. And you know where I'm coming from. And it's like, I tell the patients this, I'm like, okay, look, this is going to be the hardest thing for you to accept. There's nothing wrong with you. Okay. You're just fine.
And it's so fascinating, because again, I was thinking, I've looked at just the beautiful work you've done, and I just had a sense from looking at you, the kind of man that you are. And I thought, where we would resonate is that the larger, like if you go, I always like to go upstream. I like to see, you know, how close can I get to the headwaters of
Right.
whatever source
Right.
of this is, right? And that the difference is, we trust life. You know, so if I trust the message, it assumes that this isn't a punishment.
That's
I'm not,
right.
this
That's right.
is to the father being visited upon the children, right?
That's right.
No, this is the life is knocking. You know, there's a great vignette from A Grief Observed, from C.S. Lewis's book, you know, Grief Observed, and his wife Joy is dying of cancer, you know, and it's just that little excerpt from it. But she says she's running. She starts to panic because she just feels like God's chasing her down, you know, and she's going to every corner. And finally she stops. And when it is God saying, wait, I've got a gift for you. And this is just what we're saying, you know, in the shift. And I don't know how you know, as a true healer, how you're able to help people come to a point. This, you know, we do this in different fields, you know,
That's right. It's the same
entrepreneurs.
thing. It's all the same thing. We're just approaching from different angles, right?
So
And
how do you help effectuate, or how do you shepherd that shift from fear to trust?
it is interesting. It's resonate with people, right? Like this, okay, I'm going to tell you this crazy story, because you might find some amusement in it, and I hope you do. I studied for 4 years what happened to America. So we had to sell our practice, because me and my business partner, we banged our head against the wall and proved, as a matter of fact, you cannot be in private practice in rural America. You should sell to the hospital, and there's no need. The handwriting on the wall is developed by the blood from your head, and you should use the door instead, right? And so we sold out, and it's like, so in the process of all this turmoil, it's been 2 years we sold out. In the process of that, I'm doing online work, and I'm listening to Baroque music. I'm just trying to read and study what happened to America, and studying thoughts like, what was interesting to me, like what was evocative in that information, even forbidden information. My dad's a history professor, retired. And it's like this, he doesn't want to have these conversations about the stuff that I have learned, okay? And I'm okay with that, but it's challenging, because I had to allow myself to study the forbidden things that are not allowed in the academic gatekeeper won't let it pass, right? And that's okay. But it's like, so anyway, so 4 years in, I'm sitting in there one day, and I'm like, you know, I'm thinking about the image of the bush in the Bible, okay?
Mhm.
And I'm like, the bush that caught Abraham's ram and allowed Abraham to see the existence of the good God. I'm like, that's interesting. And then there's the bush that Moses talked to, that was a cell phone that allowed him to talk to God. And I'm like, well, this bush thing is quite interesting as a literary symbol. I think it deserves a little bit more attention than I've given it. I said, how do you spell it in Hebrew? Right? So I started studying Hebrew, and I'm like, in a million years, I never thought I would find value in studying Hebrew, and I did. Shin Yod Tov is how you spell bush in Hebrew. You say shit. And I know, like, what? And I'm like, I really literally looked at the sky and laughed, because I'm like, that's ridiculous. And then I translated back into English from the Hebrew, and it means bush, thicket, and discourse, which kind of blew my mind, and that almost knocked me off my chair. I was sitting on a stool. I'm like, wow, that just, because it was unexpected, right? And so it goes like this. The what I have learned is there's a book by a guy named David Scribina. He's a philosopher. He studied panpsychism in the West, is a book he wrote. And it's like, the premise is this: the universe is conscious and interacting with you in a conscious fashion. So you're having a conversation with it. And you look at the first word of the Bible in Hebrew, or Proto-Hebrew, would be Brashit, which is it's translated as Genesis in English, but I think it means make conversation, make discourse.
Wow.
You, everybody. That's the take home for me is this: we generate our own reality by, think about this, shit happens. And the question is this: that's God talking to you, like, just God throws this shit at you. And then he goes like this, he just waits for your response. And there's an emotional element to the response, and like a verbal thing that you say, like what happened. And then it attracts certain things and then rejects other things. And it's like, that's the generative function that is interesting to me. And that's what I try to resonate with my patients on that level, which is like, how do you cause them to understand how you think about it makes a huge difference. How you talk about it, right?
Oh, my wife she has a PhD in linguistics for word medicine. And
Interesting.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah, I'm talking metaphorically.
Okay.
Word medicine. I'm just listening all the time. I don't say problem, I don't, I just, you said, there's just a way of just constant, and I don't even, I aspire not to use the word but.
Me too. Me too.
Isn't that great? And then you just use the word and you can't help it. You just can't help but not dismissive. And there's so much.
That word doesn't work. There's a problem with this word. It's like, who created that word and why?
Yeah. So it's interesting because as I look back, I just turned 69. I realized, oh my God, I'm staring down the barrel of my 70th year. But as you can see, it's not how I resonate. It's not how I live. It's not, and it was 6 years ago, really, that things changed. And I went from fear to trust. I really went from fear to love. I went from just feeling I was in a world that was adverse to me, that I had to fight my way through, it was a
It's a choice, no?
yeah, it was a choice. And what I had to do is I had to find, life just had to reveal to me so unmistakably that it was good. I had, I had to get my fingers into the side of Christ. That's the only way that I was going to be able to really know this. And from there, then things started to make sense, and then everything changes. Now, the interesting thing is, I have a lineage, and I'm not complaining, I'm not blaming, I guess I am stereotyped. I got 4,000 years of not trusting life because my people often had a rough time of it. So, and that's just in my genes. So I still have the genetic makeup of someone who's looking over, not metaphorically looking over my shoulder or thinking of all kinds of things.
Right.
It's okay, because I don't have to wait for that to go to still, like, I knew you were going to be a good man. I know we were going to have a great conversation. I could have sat here and had performance anxiety and say, what the hell are we going to talk about? But I just assumed that life was going to bring me what we call, my people call a mensch, a good human being.
It. That's what I seek to be.
Yeah. And that's, you are. And so it's just a total, it's bringing in a different reality. And it doesn't mean that there's not challenges and everything else that comes with it.
That's right.
It doesn't mean that I see the world through some kind of weird, positive reinforcement, like some template that I'm putting over life that's not real. I think when you resonate with that kind of goodness and that kind of love, you're actually getting into the truth of what is, rather than just creating a good world.
That's right. That's right. It's like, yes. That's a funny thing. So I drive to work about 4:00 in the morning every day. Like 3:45, I'm driving to work. And it's like, there's a certain light, there's a stoplight. It's the last stoplight, and it red or green, man. I'm like, thank you. Just thank you. Just practice. You know what I mean? It's practice, because it's like, it's stopping me from being where I'm not supposed to be. And it's letting me go when it's time to go. It's just Thank you. Right. And it's just a practice to be properly resonating with the positive nature that is provided to us. Right.
Well, there's something beautiful in that because it's a practice that then becomes your perspective, and that's, to me, that's the transformational piece. And a quick story: I mentioned that I used to mentor college students, and I did when we were running our software company. We're also running these spiritual groups at UNC and
Ah,
State and Duke, and so I worked with probably thousands of young people,
that's
and
cool, man.
it was great. It was I really I enjoyed it, and one of the young men from Duke had visited a Trappist monastery near Charleston, West Virginia, called Metcalfe Abbey. And so he said, "You got to go down." And I said, I don't think they take kindly to my people down there. But I went down and just found this beautiful. You talk about, they get up at three
Right.
o'clock every morning. It's a very, very severe order. And I became quite friendly with the monks down there, and eventually with the man who became the abbot. And I had a profound spiritual experience. It was 2013, and I was on retreat, and it was a classic thing, and my life just fell apart. My marriage fell apart. My
Oh,
business fell apart. The spiritual group that I was deeply invested in fell apart. Just like you draw it up on the chalkboard, right? And,
boom.
and I was in a retreat in Italy, in Tuscany area,
Right.
and I just had a very profound experience, which was quite surprising because I just didn't think. And I'm not claiming enlightenment or anything. I I I got a taste of the absolute, and I came back. When I came back home, and I just happened to be down at the monastery. I was in the area for a board meeting, and I drove to see and I saw the abbot, and I said, "Can we talk?" And we said, we were both busy, and we ended up hooking. Anyway, the moral of the story is, when I was finally in his office, and he looked at me and he said, "Whatever happened to you is real." He said, "Because you're grateful." And he said, "Here at the monastery, gratitude is the coin of the realm for authenticity."
That's right. I like that.
Yeah, it was nice to get it confirmed by some people that had put a little bit of
Some
time.
authorities, man. You got to see a little approval. It's like, all right, that worked.
It was funny down there. Half the monks knew half the monks knew I was Jewish, and the ones who bothered just figured I was Italian. So my daughter's Abby is actually named after the Abbey.
That's nice.
But it's a beautiful way to live, and you can feel it in human beings who actually have that gratitude, who appreciate that gratitude.
It's interesting, it's like this. I think it's like people like talk about being thankful. And they're like, okay, it's real easy to be thankful when something good happens to you. Like, man, when something bad happens, are you thankful? Because you should be, because thank God, right? Because it's like, where did that come from? It's like, there's a reason for it. And it is lining you up properly with what is, you know, you're off balance, you slip and fall and hit the ground. And it's like, okay, that's just a reminder. And it's be thankful for when the not nice thing happens as much as when the nice thing happens too. Then you're properly balanced in the middle of it all, right? That's how I see it.
And then you don't have to spend your life twisting yourself up into a knot trying to see life in a certain way. And I think one of the skills that I know without knowing you, but knowing you without knowing you, that one of the skills that you have, one of your superpowers, is getting people to experience that viscerally. Because if it's just an idea in your head, it's just an idea. It doesn't.
Right.
When the shit does hit, it's a very thin. It doesn't really. It's a thin veneer to protect you from the circumstances.
That's right.
So what is it? What is it that you enable? Whatever. If you could reverse engineer or deconstruct what it is that enables you to have people experience that viscerally in your practice and in your life.
That's interesting. That's a good question. I like that. Thank you. The it's like it's I think that it comes down to a genuine appreciation for the humanity on the other side of the table, right? Which is like,
Beautiful. By the way, that is just, you nailed it. I just got to say, you just hit it out of the park. So I set you up. I gave you the bad
yeah,
guy.
no, it's a beautiful pitch, man. It's a softball.
You, you just,
So it is like the funny thing is, like, it's from my position, is like, look, the contemptible thing of my job is this: I have to give you a diagnosis, okay? Otherwise, I won't get paid, okay? That's just the nature of the corporate beast, right? And so it's like this. It's like the problem is that when I give you a diagnosis, regardless of anything else of your humanity, that now there's a strong propensity of you to go, it's my diagnosis that was given to me by the doctor, and now it's attached to me like a limpet, right? And it's like that, like, so I'm like, look, I have to give you a diagnosis to get paid, but there's nothing wrong with you, okay? And it's okay. I have to write something down or they will not pay. So I'm just writing it down to get paid. It has nothing to do with you really. And I want to separate them from that as much as possible, because it's like the worst thing I see is identification with pathology, right? Like, oh, that's my, oh, it's like, oh my God, we have a problem because we got to do this. We have to separate you like Siamese twins and move the illness away. And then you can be free of it because it's not necessary. It's baggage, right? And so it's like, that's the trick right there. And I tell the people this, it's probably the hardest thing for you to believe there's nothing wrong with you, man, right? Because you think about it, like in ourselves, the hardest thing for us to get away from is the accuser that lies within, right? That says, you suck because I know of all the warts. I know where all the skeletons are buried and all that. And it's like, you just catch yourself kicking yourself all the time. And I'm like, okay, that's just your mind running over you. And so I help them train their mind, right? Because it's like, it's a fascinating thing. It's like your mind, it's like okay, so there's this thing, right? So like, okay, so this is a common experience that people have. When you lie awake, can't sleep because you just keep on thinking and you can't stop thinking. Yeah, you're not thinking. You just think that you're thinking. Your thoughts are actually just possessing you and you're trying to keep up with them. And it's like, okay, that's an error of mental activity controlling your will. And so I try to train them how to avoid that and get their thinking under control. And I'm the only doctor that I know that does this. And I discovered it accidentally, which is quite just serendipitous, right? So I live on a rural country road. The speed limit is 35 miles an hour. And the local citizens drive, and I do too, 40 miles an hour. And some of them go faster, and the rabbits can't keep up with that. And sometimes inevitably there's the dumb bunny, and he's underneath the wheels, and he's turned into road rash. And it's like, I would see the bunny, and it would upset me for 20 minutes. And I'm like, oh my God, help me. This is just so getting out of hand, because I can't stop thinking innocent bunny didn't do anything wrong, and now he's just, right? And it tormented me, right? So spontaneously what I did was I said, God, help me. What am I going to do? Because this is getting out of hand. And I spontaneously started saying the Lord's Prayer whenever I saw the dead bunny. And it quit bugging me like fast. And I said, this is powerful. I start prescribing it, right?
Wow.
And I start prescribing it, and I'm like, okay, but then, so it's an interesting process because I'm prescribing it and I'm getting feedback from the patients, right?
Right.
And I ran into 2 patients in 1 week. The only 2 patients that ever said they couldn't do it. And one of them said she was mad at God because her brother died a bad death. And I was like, wow, that's so not going to work, right? And I twisted her arm and convinced her to say that she would do it, and she left. And I didn't see her for a year. And she came back a year later, and I'm like, wow, I never expected to see you again. And she says, you helped me so much last time I saw you. And I said, really? I said, your friends told me that you lied to me and didn't do what you said you were going to do. And she's like this. She goes, no, you helped me so much by what you said. I go, what did I say? Because I don't know what I said, right? She said, here's what you said. So the conversation specifically went like this. She goes, her brother died a terrible death. She said, it's not fair. And this is what she resonated with. I said, life's not fair. And she remembered that. And she said, every time she ran into an obstacle in her life, she said, life's not fair, and just jumped over it and kept on going. And it's like spaghetti on the wall, you don't know what's going to stick when you talk to people. So you're like, be careful what you say, right?
Well, somewhere, I mean, first of all, obviously, all that connection's got to be heart to heart. The words they're just a medium.
That's right.
They're almost like it's an energy. It's just an energetic expression. energetic manifestation that's going over, and that you connected, and that is the gift. That's the gift of, that's the healer in you. To me, everything else is, these are just tools. These are just props that you get to.
That's right. That's
They're
right.
just to distract people from what you're really up to. So, I want to go back and first of all, just kind of note what you said. It's the connection to the individual on the other side that really makes
It's
it.
a human being, right? It's a human being, and it's like it requires certain tenderness and sensitivity and awareness, and it's like we're all fragile beings and we're all imperfect, and it's like, and it's so easy to cast blame and aspersions and see the faults in everybody, because it's like we're flawed and rotten creatures, it's just the way we are, and it's like we do the best we can, and it's like the empathetic attachment to that person to help them to be better at being what they choose to be, and to not blame themselves for all their flaws and that are their faults, right? And it's like, it's okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting because as I heard someone say, and this has been part of my transformation, is that your humanity is the door to the divinity. And it's not, that's not just like nice. Oh, that doesn't, it's true. There is, why the hell did we bother coming down here if we weren't going to be human? And one thing you were talking earlier about the self-hatred and stuff is that one of the, I don't know if I call it the services, but when I think about my highest and yet best use, I say I pull thorns out of lions' paws.
I like that.
I love working with lions. I love working with people that are having an impact, and almost invariably there's a thorn in their paw. Now, a small percentage of them recognize that, and part of the art of this is finding the words and finding the message and finding the right people that you can do that for. But what matter, and the thorns come in many different, sizes and shapes and blah, blah. I don't know what the metaphor would be, but it invariably is the same thing, which is it's a lack of self-acceptance. It's a lack of self-love. And I, especially people like us who are very contemplative and really want to see the truth about ourselves, we can list our fault. Man, we can just,
It's hard, man. It's a hard road.
we have the 56 count, 56-page indictment, right?
Oh yeah, buddy.
And I'll tell you, interesting for what it's worth, in my own experience, and this has happened recently, at least in this particular form, is that I realize, like you, I meet people with such understanding and compassion, and really, I is look, I was a trial lawyer, I'm a businessman, I'm all that. I'm not a pie in the sky kind of guy. I just see love, I really just see love, and I thought, wait a minute, I do that for everybody but myself.
That's right.
What
That's
the
the
hell?
hardest guy to do that for, man. It's like, dude, but
It's like, duh. I mean, why am I the one being in this universe that doesn't deserve the same vision that I have for everybody else? And it's so liberating.
I don't know what to say to that, man. It just makes me laugh. It's like I'll start crying in a minute. It's so true. It's like, yeah, what is it about me that that deserves a shit pile, right?
Why am I the one creature that's disqualified? And everybody's
Right?
got the perfect reason for it, because we
That's
know
right.
ourselves. But it's
No,
just such nonsense. And it's freed me up. And it's just a way, I realized it was just a way to keep myself small. And it really was. It was a way for me to not step fully into who I am and what I'm here to do.
right,
Because I could always say I don't deserve it, or I'm not ready for it, or
right.
just a few more Hail Mary, a few more rosaries, or a few more whatever, a few more 30 days retreats, and I'll be ready to do it. And no, it's now. And I think it's a gift that both of us do, is to be able to bring that love and that perspective to people. And I'm really happy to be alive, and I'm really happy there's people like you that I'm sharing the planet with.
It's a wonderful thing, and I'm like this. Like I really resonated well with your website with the thorns and paws, and I thought that was cool. I'm like, wow, maybe I better chat with that man about my problems.
Yeah, and I want to, I want to get you on my podcast. I'll get you on my podcast too. I mean, if we could go either way. We could interview each other
That's
forever.
it.
I just want to. So let me ask you something. What is it that what's your highest and best? What do you find yourself in terms of that? What's the thing that you do better than anyone else could do, or you do so authentically that no one else could do it the way you do it?
I don't know. It's like it's what I'm interested in doing is I'm trying to help create systems for social systems to help people to properly resonate with each other and in community for the purpose of positive generation of highest values, and which is like I see so many impediments to everybody all around, and it's like, okay, look, let's how do we eliminate those things and help the people to get into a proper track so they're aligned with reality so that they can resonate with one another and with reality in a manner that is generative of the best that we can bring forth from all of us, right? And it's like, that's a bunch of gobbledygook sounding, isn't it? But that's what I'm interested in, because it's like, I think we can do so much better, right? And it's like, I want to help and it's like, I'm really aimed at the youngsters, because I'm like, oh, they got to do all the work. And it's like, I look at myself as like some kind of weird captain, right? Which is like, okay, so my job is to help kind of orient them properly, and then give them the framework and the positive reinforcement and the support that they need to be able to generate the thing that helps positive social function, I suppose.
Well, I mean, this conversation will continue after we the camera's off on other
Yeah,
days.
sure.
But I feel the same. I just want to bring out everybody's highest and best. I can't. It's almost like there's an impulse, and in fact, it's not personal. It's personalized in your body, in my body, your life experience, my life experience. But it's the same thing. My satisfaction, my greatest satisfaction is when and yours, I would assume yours as well from what you say, is when that just gets unleashed. And for me, in a business standpoint, and really business is just my Trojan horse into people's lives. I'm good at it.
Right.
And I can
Right, I
just
like that, man.
they can justify paying me because it'll help their bottom line. That's fine. I don't mind that. But um, what I for me in business is I hear their calling. I hear their calling, and I see the market opportunity.
Right.
So it's my job. My job is to connect their calling with, and knowing that it'll bring out the best in both. That will manifest just the way I wasn't meant to be a wood chopping monk. I could have
Right.
gotten a cave, got enlightened. What the hell good would that have done anybody, right? So, and there's a way that you do the same thing. And it's great. You got the body to work with. You've got you've got something with a pretty quick
It's,
feedback loop.
yeah, right. It's really, really pretty obvious. It's material, right? And it's
Yeah,
like I like this metaphor though, the thorn in the paw, right? Because
yeah,
it says it well. It's like, man, you remove that, you'll be better, right? And it's like you pull that out and you're good, man. You're like gonna be tearing down the trails, right?
yeah. And I would say that if there's lions out there with thorns, I'd love, and they're the right people. I can't work with everyone. And maybe you have to because
Nobody
you're
can. Nobody can. I
right.
don't. I think that's a madman's dream to think you can, because it's like, no, there's gonna be like positive resonance, and then there's going to be antipathy sometimes, and it's just like it's just the nature. It is what it is, and it's like some water and oil don't mix, right? And it's okay.
Yeah, it's funny. Because when I was a trial lawyer and I was in this corrupt town, and I mean, it was beyond anything. That's what I wrote probably the book about, part biographical of my teacher and part of this incredibly corrupt town. And
Wait. I got to ask you this question, because you just begged the question to me. But I have to ask. It's obligatory, which is you. Do you think that your incredibly corrupt town was exceptional in some fashion? Because I'm kind of convinced it's just normal.
well, it's really interesting you mentioned that. I think it was particularly corrupted. I mean, we had the largest Hare Krishna community in the world in Moundsville, West Virginia, and it was just it was actually taken down by the RICO statute, racketeering
Wow.
statute. And they
Wow.
owned the town, they owned the judges, they owned the health department, they owned the prosecutors, they owned everybody, and we were the only ones who fight. So I just came up across corruption of a scale that was killing children. I don't want to
Oh
get into
my.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
just really,
yeah.
it was just horrible. And so I was adversarial. You know, probably I had that teacher behind me too, who's telling you to stab the first guy that looks at you sideways. You know, with him it wasn't necessarily metaphorical, but anyway,
It's just a,
yeah. So, but anyway, I had rather an adversarial relationship to life, and then I just realized as becoming the men that we are now and talking as we aren't we you know we are now is that I just have fewer. The resonance is such that I attract fewer and fewer people. I was thinking the other day, you know, I think one person in my life right now who's really still mad at me. And it was interesting. Without to, I had a business partner who ended up embezzling for me.
nice.
Yeah, great. And it was quite, it was my best, it was quite hard. And
Mm,
his wife had just written me this horrific email about, you know, what a terrible person I was, and she never trusted me and blah blah blah. And it really hurt
mm.
me. A beautiful human being. And I was thinking about, well, she's the last one. And then, son of a bitch, I'm walking my dogs. I opened a voicemail, and it's an apology from her saying,
Whoa,
"I'm so sorry. I had you wrong." You know, and it
wow,
was totally unsolicited. I hadn't thought about her in 6 months.
wow,
But I think
wow.
it's the resonance we're talking about. There was just a way that I don't want that. I know I don't want that in my life. I just don't want I want a pure channel. It's what you were talking about, the person on the other side of the table. I want a pure channel between me and the people, that as pure channels I can possibly have.
That's nice,
With
man.
all of our humanity and all of our quirks and all of our warts and everything.
Right, right. It's
So
a little rough around the edges, but
I
it's
just
just a good channel, man.
don't want I just don't want to fight. I just don't want to fight. I don't have to fight. So
That's it.
anyway,
So that's a like it's like the issue is it. I look to the tradition of natural law, which is all about cooperation. Because it's like, how do we make it so we just can cooperate? Because we know what to do and we know how to treat each other, that we can cooperate. That's natural law. And that's what all that we need. And if we behave properly, we just don't need much else. We don't need anybody hammering on us, telling us what to do. We know what to do. And it's like, how hard is this? It's all ingrained. It's like intrinsic hardwired programming. It's like we know what to do. It's there's a the Greeks talked about this. I don't know how many. I'm going to say 3,000 years ago. Okay, and I'm just making stuff
I'm
up.
not going to hold you to the math. It's okay. Whatever.
It's like okay, I appreciate that. It's like it's phi. Okay, the golden ratio,
Yeah.
right? Which is like it's a ratio but the greater treats the lesser as the sum of the two treat the greater. Does that make sense?
No, I need it.
So
It's
it's
very
like
deep.
this. It's the golden ratio is artistic too. They use it in creating architecture, art, and but it's like it's like there's larger segment A and smaller segment B. Okay, so A is to B as A plus B is to A. And it's like, so the greater will treat the smaller as the sum of the two will treat the greater. So you're not seeking advantage by being greater in numbers or whatever. And it's like, that's the right answer. Those guys were right on the money. I mean, like 3,000 years ago. And it's like, that's the right answer is we treat the other like we would have ourselves be treated too. And that's the right answer. And it's like, just natural law. I like that so much. And it's like, it's a weird thing because my granddad was Catholic. Okay, I'm not. I was baptized as a Lutheran, I think. So I'm told, right? No, because I don't recall any of this, man. There's no consent. And it goes like this. It's like the Catholics talked about this stuff they studied it for 2,000 years, right? It's like, you know what? I figure they learned something useful. And it's like, however corrupt the institution of the church may be, right? And I'm certain it is quite corrupt, just like all human institutions are. But it's like they've learned stuff. And it's like they figured it out. And it's like, one of the things they came up with, which I've resonated with in our conversation, is all that is good. There is no negative thing. There's only positive things. Even if we don't like the positivity that is expressed by the rattlesnake or whatever the bad thing we think is, right? It is a vampire bat. It sounds a little rough, and it's like, but it has a positive value. We don't have to understand it because we don't understand the creation that's in its totality, right? And it's okay. But it's like, so it's like this, when I run into people, and it's like, especially like people that have like significant mental issues, like schizophrenics. Okay, I treat several schizophrenics, and I'm like, you know what? I don't know why God made you like this, because either you have some special skills, and it's like super sensitivity, like hear voices, like, okay, I don't know what that means, and I know they're going to call you a schizophrenic, and it's like, my advice is you be very careful of which ones you listen to, because it's like they can cause you problems, and you know it. And that schizophrenics recognize this, and they resonate with this. And what is it? I let them talk to me, and it's funny because they will trust me and tell me some stories that they're like, they don't tell people because it sounds crazy, right? And I'm like, because I'm not judging them. I'm like, because I recognize there's some value there that I don't understand, and I'm good. Just, I want to hear about your experience. And it's like, I know it's difficult because it's like you hear these experiences that are just outside the, like, so far outside the norm. It's like, just to be able to hear the story is a privilege, because it means they trust you enough to tell you something that just sounds out of the park.
Yeah, there's a couple things there. I remember I was at my daughter's 16th birthday. I took her and a bunch of friends down to amusement park in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was sitting next to a girl, and she had autism, and she was
Mm.
afraid to go on the ride. And I was talking to her, and she said, "You remind me of my dad." I said, "Oh." She goes, "You're old and you're kind."
That's nice.
And you're kind, and that's what they're sensing. It's the "and you're kind" part.
Right, right,
They just sense you're trustworthy,
right.
and it's interesting. I get the personal. I was debating whether to mention this or not, but my daughter, I was older because I was the celibate, seeker. I got married when I was older. My then wife was older, and we ended up we had a went through a lot of things that older couples do, and then we ended up adopting this beautiful girl, this beautiful, in Utah, perfect baby girl at birth, and then through the years we started having some challenges with her, and all through these challenges I have, I mean, not only do I trust it, but I have friends in the, kind of the shamanic realm and other realms, and all of them said the same thing. She has a destiny. She just can't incarnate, and she's too sensitive to incarnate into this body that she's in right now.
Huh.
And so all through, and it's been quite a rough, and we're very close. I was very fortunate. I just sold a company when she was born, so I was able to stay home with her until she
That's
went to
nice.
school. We have a beautiful relationship, and I'm older, so I didn't feel like, oh, my life, I'm losing my life with a kid. But anyway, we're very, very close, and I have had to live. It's one thing to say, oh, they have a journey, but it's another one when it's your kid, and you're faced with this thing day to day to day, and it is, we have a beautiful, and she's really, there's a lot beautiful happening in her life and our life, our collective lives right now. But I have always, at first it was kind of like a discipline or a practice to look through life through, like, what is it, what's she here to do? Why did she take such a hard path, and how can I help fulfill
Right.
this beautiful destiny she has? And now it's just how I see her. And it's partly through that really intense experience of having something so personal to me that it makes it, I really do see that, and there's people I can't stand. There's still people in my life. I just, their bigotry, and their lack of depth, and their arrogance is just so off-putting to me. I don't want anything to do with them. So, and you know what, you get me. I'd say if I drove cross country with them, by the time I got to Kansas, we'd be friends.
Right.
So again, I just feel so, it's so great to meet someone from my home planet.
I like that, man. That's where we're at. It's as good as it gets, right?
Yeah, so I've really enjoyed this. I don't know what you'll do with it, but I've really enjoyed,
No,
communing
it's
with.
just that we're just free roaming, and just get to know each other a little bit better, and then Maybe we'll have more structure next time. How about that?
Yeah, who knows? But I tell you one more quick story. Although you and I always have one more quick story.
Right.
My wife, Julie, my beloved, the one who taught me to trust, who brought trust and love and made sense of my life 6.5 years ago. The way that I met her is I was the welcoming ambassador for my daughter's 7th grade class at our local Waldorf school. And so I had a spreadsheet because I just wanted everyone to feel well. When I came with my daughter, we weren't welcomed, and I just thought this is nonsense. So I said, let me help everybody in here, bring them in.
Nice.
So Julie was like the first name on my spreadsheet, and I called her and we talked. And I'd raise the bar. I'd say something, with a little bit of depth, and she'd meet me, and then she'd raise me, and I'd meet her, and I'd raise her. And I kept saying, okay, well, look, this is a guy and a woman. So first of all, it's straight. Somebody always backs down, irrespective, but especially when it's the opposite sex, you go back to something and she never did. And I thought, oh, this is extraordinary. And that's what I feel, when I meet someone like you, we just keep seeing each other and raising each other. We never go back to humanity. So that's how you have to me, that's one of the indicias of an authentic relationship, which
I like that.
Which we form.
That's beautiful. And it's like yes, the what a world, man. And it's quite an adventure. We share it, right?
Oh my God, it's just beginning. I'm just getting started.
That's right. So tell the people for the audience your website if they're interested in checking you out.
Sure. Absolutely. So the name of the business is Heart Powered Ventures. So that's HERT powered. So it's ventures, it's companies that are powered by the heart. So it's heartpoweredventures.com. That's the best way to find me. We have our own podcast as well. We have fascinating people on, like my host here today, who has made me appear fascinating, whether I am or not.
You're fascinating, man. I assure you. Like, there's no question in my mind. I'm very pleased to.
And I would just add that if you have something you want to bring out into the world and you want that to be a true manifestation of your best self, that's what I most love to do. And if you're a lion with a thorn, come my way, man. We'll pull it out and we'll roar through life together.
Wonderful. Well, David, I want to thank you again for spending a minute with me.
No, it's great. We'll turn off the tape and figure out what comes next.
There you go. Let's do that.
All right.
Hang on, I'm turning off the tape. I got to make sure I don't do something goofy. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Best Medicine Podcast with Bradley H. Werrell, D.O. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe below, either over there or over there. Also, if you're interested in a medical consultation with myself, there's also information below.